Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards. In the last part, we went through all of Shiver Star and now we're in the final world of the game, Ripple Star, good old Ribbon's homeworld. And the first level is actively just a palette swap with the very first level in the game in Pop Star. I've always found this really cute, but also really weird, I won't lie. I guess it's a showcase that Ribbon and Kirby's world aren't too different, barring, dark matter invading this one, but again, Kirby's been through that twice already, so I guess he's just kind of used to it at that point. As a very good showcase, this level is a color swap of the first level in the game to the point where even the crystal shards are largely in the same place. And because of that, I'm actively choosing this level as the one to leave a crystal shard behind in until later, so I can actively showcase both of the game's endings. There's even a mini-boss in the exact same space. Either before you enter the stage or somewhere along the line in the level, you do want to make sure you get the power combo of Needle and Bomb, because we do need that to break a block in order to get one of the crystal shards here, by the way. So let's actually take some time to actively wrap up the staff from the game overall. The next role that's listed are the general producers. There are 3 listed: Masayoshi Tanimura, Hiro Akisuga, and Kenji Miki. Masayoshi Tanimura started actually as a producer on this game, and then they were a producer in general for HAL Laboratories moving forward, working on things like being a producer on Canvas Curse, Squeak Squad, Kirby Air Ride. Overall, their most recent roles in such a role are Kirby's Blow Up Blast and Kirby's Clash Deluxe. Worth noting, though, they are still with HAL, just as the overall chairman of the company. Hiroaki Suga, on the other hand, started as a writer for Rally X and the VIC-20. They were a composer or music programmer for Rollerball and the MSX and F1 Race, game designer for Rollerball and the Sharp X1. But the first game, a lot of people are going to immediately recognize that they worked on, it was actually the Golf Force game I talked about last time. They were the producer of that HAL Golf Force Eternal Story game. Eggerland 2, they were director. Air Fortress, they were the director. The Eggerland game we've talked about already a couple times, Make no Fukatsu, they were the director there. Adventures of Lolo, they were the uncredited music programmer. So that song that's forever stuck in my head is their responsibility. Director of New Ghostbusters 2, programmer for Arcana, chief programmer for Kirby's Adventure, Alka Hess, they were the chief programmer as well. Producer for Kirby's Dream Land 3, Star Stacker, and Smash 64. Producer for this. Producer for Melee, Nightmare in Dreamland, Air Ride, Canvas Curse. Their most recent credits overall are as a supervisor on Planet Robobop, supervisor for Box Boy, and producer for Kirby's Fighter Deluxe and DDD's Drum Dash Deluxe. Worth noting, the first level in Ripple Star is all happy-go-lucky because it's all cutesy, but remember, this world is currently kind of being possessed by dark matter, so level 2 beyond are a lot more serious in tone, especially musically. This song actually used to scare me when I first heard it. So the final of the major producers is Kenji Miki, who was actively an uncredited director for a lot of early NES games and was a very early Nintendo employee when it came to the game design stuff in general. Uncredited director for baseball, pinball, and golf, as well as Ice Climbers. Director of Golf US and Japan courses, Mario Open Golf, Warriors Woods, he was the producer. Producer for GoldenEye, as well as Blast Corps. Busted Groove, he was a modeler. Pokemon Stadium 1 in Japan, he was a producer. Mario Party, he was a supervisor. Producer for Pokemon Snap, Stadium Western 1, Smash 64, Stadium 2, Paper Mario, this. Once you got into the GameCube era, he was a producer for Eternal Darkness, Disney's Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse, Doshin the Giant, Hamtaro Ham Ham Heartbreak, Metroid Prime. But circa around 2004, he started slowing down, only being a producer on things like Ham Ham Games, Metroid Prime 2, Thousand Year Door, he was a project manager. 2005, he was only actually in the special thanks section for Star Fox Assault, and that's because he slowly started winding out even more. His last few credits are all in special thanks with Wii Sports, Face Training for the DS, Smash Brawl, and doing the original golf course designs for Wii Sports Resorts. After that, there's only 3 names listed in the credits, and they're all pretty familiar names if you know anything about Nintendo's history. The supervisors are Satoru Iwata and Shigeru Miyamoto, and the executive producers Hiroshi Yamauchi, of course. It's kind of hard to escape any of the 3 of them on anything Nintendo put out, even with 2 of them having since passed. I think Iwata was technically in credits this year via the Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild. And while I think Yamauchi's last credit was in 2019, it's kind of hard to escape him even when you revisit anything remotely prior to, 2015 or so. Adeline here is to give us an invincibility candy, and you might as well take advantage of it, but make sure you at least have Cutter around here, because you need that to get this crystal shard. Thankfully, like I said again, as long as you have an ability that has one of the pieces in that, you can usually break single color blocks. It's when it's double colored you need to have the specific combination of powers. Now, this is actively technically the last normal level in the game, because the third level here on Ripple Star is also the last level period that's not just boss fights. With that said, before we enter the level itself, I'm going to head back to the first level of this world and grab a power combo I need for a crystal shard in the next level. We need Burn and Needle specifically, which is a bit of a fun one, albeit it's a really awkward one to hit with. Kirby turns into a bow and arrow, and you shoot a flaming arrow. With that said, it has one hell of an arc. So if you're trying to hit things low to the ground, you're not going to be in luck. But if you're trying to hit anything remotely in midair or above you, you're in pretty good shape. With that said, again, I actively play through this level twice because I forget to grab the crystal shard with this power combo. Mostly because it's probably the most well-masked color combo block in the game. So this level is largely a bunch of enemy arenas with every single enemy type you've fought throughout the game in various ways. I think they kind of do them in themes where you get a lot of mid-air enemies in one, you get a lot of the ground-based ones in another. But you're fighting pretty much everything in the game here, so it's a pretty bland level, ultimately, I guess is the way to put it. To the point where after this specific room, I speed up all other instances of enemy rushes here, just to help things get along, because we know what we're doing. Plus, as you can probably tell by the title down below, this is also the final part of the LP, and this helps me make it more in equal length with the previous part, so we're not here for like a half hour on top of some other things I edited around later on in the part. It's this next room in specific that has the weirdly well-disguised color block hiding a crystal shard, because there's a giant sun in the center of the floor. The very center of that is what you need to hit with the arrow from the Burn Needle combo to break it. Not any other part of it, just the exact center circle portion. So not only do you have it pretty well disguised by the tiling there, but also with the power combo in question, it's also really awkward to hit. The annoying thing is I look back at the footage and I can tell I hit just above it once because there's an enemy right on top of it, but because it doesn't make contact with the floor, no crystal shard for me on that specific run. Kind of annoying, but it's a pretty short stage to redo all the same because all I have to do is just like 6 enemy rushes that are, again, pretty quick. And keep in mind, this is the last thing in the game that I would say is relatively quick because the boss fight of this world as well as the final boss are all relatively long fights compared to prior boss fights. And it's partially because of the unique circumstances in which they're fought, but I'll talk more about that once we get into the next level after we go back to get that crystal shard in a moment. Also, because we're at the picnic table, worth noting, I actually went and did the math. There are 81 of these little info cards I talked about that I've been grabbing at the end of every level. There are only 22 levels in which you can earn cards in the game. So even if you got a new card every single time you played a level, you would only have a fourth of them by the time you finished it. So you really need to play those levels over and over again to get them, which, if you're trying to find the crystal shards, especially if it's the third crystal shard and you're almost at the end of the stage anyway, isn't the worst, but it's definitely annoying. It's why it's the only thing on the LP I'm not doing. Boss of Ripple Star is Miracle Matter. This is actually a very difficult boss compared to everything else in the game because you actively can't use power combos on it very effectively. The thing with this boss is that its HP is notated by the eyes on the overall 3D shape, but you can only do damage to it while it's using one of its attacks, with the attack in question, like inhaling one of these needles and throwing it at the mass core. Every single one of its attacks is based off one of the base copy abilities in the game, none of the power combos. And you can only damage each phase of it with either the power-up in question directly or a power combo involving it. So, say the bomb one right there. I can only damage that with bomb or any power combo involving bomb, and said power combo could also damage the form that has the other half of it in it. So if I was using Needle Bomb, that could damage Needle and Bomb forms for Miracle Matter. That alone actively makes this fight go on a lot longer than any boss fight in the game, with maybe exception to the final boss from the full ending we'll showcase later on this part. As for each of the forms in the attack, it does, when it's just the white form, it does nothing but change into another one. It can turn into an ice cube, which is based around the ice ability. That will rotate ice cubes around it like so, just trying to damage you by swinging them around wildly. If it turns into a circle, that's the burn form, it's going to vomit fire in the cardinal directions around it to try and damage you that way. If it's a giant black bubble, that is the bomb form. It'll throw 4 giant bombs around that will then break off into smaller ones and smaller ones until they become the ones you can swallow up and shoot at the main fight. If it's a giant rock, it's a rock. It'll try to hover on top of you before jumping down 2 rocks to either side of it and then moving on to do some more of that exact thing before rolling around on the floor a bit. If it becomes a little fish shape, that's the cutter one, that's just going to do several rotations across the screen to get wider and wider until it tries to dash at you directly. If it becomes the needle form, which is shaped like a sun, it'll shoot out 8 needles in the cardinal and intercardinal directions until it tries to hit you. And then if it becomes a spark of energy like this, it'll fire lasers directly at you that'll bounce around the room and wrap around the screen until there's enough of them on screen that it becomes kind of complicated to dodge. But at that point, there's at least so many of them that you can easily swallow them and try to hit the main body with it. This fight is a real difficulty spike compared to everything else in the game. And it's kind of neat for it, but it's also kind of a pain in the ass. Kirby final bosses can definitely have their ups and downs difficulty-wise. I tend to prefer them when they're a little bit more on the hard side. But compared to the rest of the game, this is a little bit of an off-feeling difficulty, if only because you need to be so much more precise with your limited health. And you get another crystal shard for beating it. Time for one ending. The bad ending, specifically. Dark matter is seemingly removed from Ripple Star, but clearly not all is right. You get that ending by beating Miracle Matter when you do not have all of the crystal shards. Normally I wouldn't showcase the full credits to an ending like this, but I'm gonna do it this time as, while the song is the same, the sketches we're seeing along the sides are actively completely different than the ones we're gonna see in the main ending. So I'm just gonna be silent for the rest of this credits and see you guys afterwards. Before we get back into the main game, though, and we're at the eerily silent title screen, I do want to take this moment to showcase some things here on the file select. Specifically, this is where the info cards you've been collecting at the end of every level go. There are 81 in total, 9 across 9 pages, and I have about 20 or so of them. The main reason I'm not grinding out the remainder of the 81 cards is largely because since you can get duplicates, new cards get rarer and rarer until you just get them all out of complete luck. And given that means at lowest I would have a 1.2% chance of getting the final card, I'm not grinding it out, it's just not worth it. I am speeding these up, but worth noting, this game also does have minigames you can play with your friends or yourself if you're trying to get high scores. This one's the 100-yard hop, where you press either the A or B button to hop 1 or 2 spaces forward. First to the finish wins. This is a fun one, but it's very easy to get stuck in a pattern if you're not used to it, but playing with buddies is a real fun one. Bumper Crop Bump is you catching fruit that falls down from the sky into your little basket. Whoever has the highest amount of points at the end wins. You can bump into opponents to either bump them away or actively swap places with them and steal fruit that they're trying to get. This one is also incredibly chaotic fun with friends. But these are most fun little distractions that, if you have friends over, you can do. And given I tend to play games multiplayer first, not exactly my main aspect of interest. The third minigame is probably the most fun one with friends, though, Checkerboard Chase. In this, you move around the arena, pressing down the A button to send the entire row or column in front of you down to the pit below. When an opponent's HP is completely depleted at the top, the arena will actively lose a row and column to make it smaller and harder to maneuver in. This one is really good fun and actively came back in later 3D installments, and for good reason, it's probably the best minigame in the game. So with that, we're now going to make a brief blitz through Ripple Star's first level again to go grab that crystal shard I intentionally ignored and go beat Miracle Matter again so we can get onto the true ending pathway. With that said, you do need to actively beat Miracle Matter again, so depending on how much issue you had with that fight the first time around, this could be a little rough. But they at least signify that something's up because the boss fight flashes on the World Select screen. Miracle Matter can definitely be a very satisfying fight to master, but it's also a fight that never really feels like it gets easier the more times I play the game, which might be a good sign, might be a bad sign, depends on the type of player you are or what game you're playing, I find. And even then, depending on the game, there's some boss fights you just never quite get a hang on. Like, there's certain Souls-like or Mega Man bosses I still have issues with to this day. We get a Maximator for this fight, and trust me, that's actively a lot more useful than the Crystal Shard for what could be coming up here. Welcome to World 7, Darkstar. This is the only world in the game that's one level, and it's mostly just leading to the final boss. With that said, I do love the visuals of this. I'm partially convinced part of the endgame of Subspace Emissary is visually designed to resemble this very intentionally. And you don't get to hear this song for long, but the Darkstar level theme is one of my favorite songs in the game. Adeline does give you a 1-up here, and trust me, depending on how things go, you might need it, especially because if you do the bad ending first, as you can see in the bottom left, your life total gets reset, so I'm a little bit out of luck when it comes to stuff. Final boss of Kirby 64 is 0-2 stylized as 0 squared. The final boss of Kirby's Dream Land 3 has returned again and will still bleed at you. And also, fun thing, you can't return to the level select from here because the pause just says tough it out rather than try again. This fight is the usual Kirby genre shift. We're in a shoot 'em up now. You need to aim the crystal blaster that Ribbon's given us into Zero's eye to do damage to him slowly. But we're not doing damage to his health bar, we're trying to stun him here. Upon stunning him, you're going to want to hold left or right on the analog stick as hard as you can to slowly rotate around 0-2 to get to his wings. You can then shoot them to destroy the red parts and slow down his own movement speed, so you have more time to potentially damage his own actual damage spot later on. You could theoretically move directly into the damage phase, but I really recommend taking out the wings first. The way damaging 0-2 works is damaging his eyeball until he's stunned, and then moving up to above him where his halo is. You need to shoot the halo until it disappears. Upon which, the main spot you can damage will sprout out of his bottom, this weird little cactus tail that will fart green clouds at you. Worth noting, the band-aid on top is actually where the eyeball from the first Zero fight in Dreamland 3 ripped itself out of. So, yeah, this is also partially why this is part of the Dark Matter trilogy, because it's a direct follow-up to Dreamland 3, even in the narrative sense. With that said, the 0-2 boss theme is probably my favorite boss theme in Kirby. It's such a different vibe than anything else in the game, but it's such a good boss theme. Shoutouts to the Brawl version as well for being pretty good, even though it's weirdly obsessed with wanting to have bagels for some reason. After a few moments, 0-2 will pull the little cactus tail back into himself, but at that point all you need to do is head back above him and actively shoot the halo again to do more damage. The worst part about this fight, honestly, is the mashing, because you need to press the button for every single crystal shard you fire out. And if you try to mash as hard as you can, this can be a real strain on the hands compared to everything else in the game, even compared to other Kirby shooter sections. My slight advice is that there's kind of a soft limit of how many crystals you can have on screen at a time at like 4 or 5, so if you pace the button out, you'll probably do a little bit easier on your hands, but It really just depends on the type of player you are, probably, at the end of the day. I like this boss fight a lot. Kirby final bosses that get a little bit different like this are generally really weird, but when Kirby really unleashes its final boss sauce, so to speak, they're some of the most interesting looking or to fight final bosses in game history, I find. Now, I'm not sure if I brought this up back during my Kirby's Dream Land 3 LP, because that was, 7-8 years ago at this point. But worth noting, the Kirby Dream Collection on Wii has an E10 Plus rating compared to most Kirby games' E rating. It's entirely because of this final boss in the Dreamland 3 final boss's blood. And there's something about that I find very funny. Honestly, in general, I find it very funny when a re-release of a game gets a higher rating than the original version did. I think that happened in, like, Earthbound, these two games. I want to say it also happened with the Battle Network Legacy Collections, due to the one guy bringing up whiskey in Battle Network 2, let alone a certain person in Battle Network 4, if you know, you know. And I just find that kind of stuff fun. It's just a little funny thing of either showing how culture's changed or, in some ways, just what the ESRB let slip, because I think they used to not have to play the entire game back in the day. I forget when that change happened, but I think they used to just get, like, highlight reels to showcase things in the game to make the rating, rather than actively playing the game. Future me, see if you can do some research on that, actually. I'm a little bit curious. Zero 2 isn't a hard fight compared to some other things, but it's definitely a bit tense and stressful, and the atmosphere really does a lot for this here. But once you take care of that health bar, that's game over! That's two Star Wars references in this game. That's Kirby 64. I like it. I like it less now than I used to when I was a kid, though. There's some really fun stuff here. I love the visual stylings. I think this is one of the best looking games on the N64, and it coming so late in the lifespan of the system definitely helped with that. It's got some really chill atmosphere and music, but the level design I just don't find as interesting, and the dual power system, while it's really fun and there's some fun combinations, the fact you're required to use so many specific ones to get crystal shards means you don't have the full reign to experiment with them as I wish you could compared to some other games. With that said, it's still a really solid game. If you liked Kirby's Dream Land 2 and 3, you're gonna like this one a lot, is my average thing on that, I'd say. So let's talk about some brief things really quick. One, getting that last crystal shard and being the final boss. If you check your save file, you're now at 100%. Pretty safe and simple. But also, you do unlock something for beating the final boss there on the true ending. A boss rush mode. With that said, it's a little bit different than other Kirby boss rushes in that you don't actively have any copy abilities for it. You need to rely entirely on using enemy projectiles to take it out. You also get little to no healing across the entire marathon, making it really rough. If you beat it normally, you get this screen of Kirby being held up by his buddies, because I did do a run of it immediately after recording. But, and I've never done this myself, if you beat that mode without taking even a single hit, you get this really weird image of Kirby wearing a costume combining parts from every boss fight. Next time we see Kirby on the channel will probably be me tackling either Canvas Curse or probably one of the 3DS games finally, if I had to take a guess. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.